Funding for This Is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Music City Prep Clinic, Nashville-based provider for PrEP and offering comprehensive sexual health services in an environment designed to be safe, professional, and shame-free. Learn more at musiccityprep.org.
I'm Blake Farmer, and this is Nashville. Our guest this hour is Tom Morales of Tomcats Hospitality. He's a Nashville native who turned a passion for cooking into a catering business that served the stars on Hollywood sets worldwide. He made a name for himself, not just because he was creative and reliable, but because he was innovative and entrepreneurial. That faster he could feed 500 people, the faster they could get back to work on the movie set, where time is a lot of money. He's also a restaurateur and used his kitchens here as respite and rehearsal space for being out on the road. And along the way, he's kept an eye on preservation, not just buildings and institutions, but really the culture of this city. Tom Morales, welcome to This Is Nashville.
Well, thank you for having me.
Well, let's start by taking a walk. It's Saturday night, and we're weaving in and out of the masses that are making their way around the hub of tourism in Nashville, which, of course, is Lower Broadway. What on this Saturday night, what do you see around us? What's happening these days on Lower Broadway?
Well, it's certainly more debauchery than it was.
Well, it was known for debauchery,
yeah,
right?
But it was a creative debauchery. It was people making music, and Willie Nelson selling a song for $10, and it turns out to be Patsy Cline's biggest hit. And they'd go out back and smoke pot and do whatever they did. But this is more like people throwing up on the sidewalk. It was like New Orleans during its heyday, and it's not really what Nashville was when I was growing up on Lower Broad. But you got the people enjoying themselves. It's not like they're not having fun. I think COVID really changed the type of tourists that we had.
Is that right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was. The mayor said the right things, but the enforcement wasn't there, and so you had a Nevada freestyle. We had people come in all the time saying, well, we don't have to wear a mask at Kid Rock's. Well, go back to Kid Rock's. So, your hospitality person, me, who's nice to everybody, and that's how I live my life, all of a sudden had to be the policeman. Well, this is it. We're doing what the community asked us to do. And so I think in that period of time, we lost the music seeker, the person who was trying to see who was going to get on that stage, who the next big star was going to be. I mean, it's a storied history of people who played Lower Broad and got their start. In the early days of my life, if you could get on a honky-tonk stage in Nashville, you had a chance to be a star. It was a discovery platform. You had every record label had an AR person in there trying to see who. Oh, that's Alan Jackson. That's how he got discovered. Oh, that's Randy Travis. Oh, that's Willie Nelson. Oh, the stories and who got their starts there are legendary. And so, COVID really served 5 counties around Nashville. You could look at the police blotters. 60-something% of the arrests during that period of time were from really locals, and there's never been an attempt to, it's a community choice. Unfortunately, the people, you can have codes that say we need a diverse type of retail businesses. During COVID, the amount of bar space doubled.
You're saying people were building during COVID, and it became kind of serving alcohol was the primary business.
Yes, there's a few businesses on 5th and Broad that are you can go and buy something, but think about all the boot stores, the pawn shops, they all added a flavor. You talk about we talk about debauchery.
Well, nobody was seeking out the pawn shop, but you're right that it at least had brought some variety. You've been pretty tough on Nashville's entertainment district. That of course draws so many people and is kind of the reason it's been successful in some ways. But what is the thing, if you put your finger on it? What is it that bugs you about it?
That it's no longer a discovery platform. It's no longer what's cool. It's more about who's the big star and let's name a bar after them. And
okay. Instead of being about discovered, it's like whose name is on the bar. Which, of course, I mean, all the big names, they're putting their name on a bar.
What do you think the chances of you finding Jason Aldean inside of his bar?
Well, I'm sure it happens from time to time, but you make a good point. Well, these throngs of people certainly bring you business, right? I mean, you've got Acme Feed Seed that's right there, across from Hard Rock Cafe. You got the Southern Steak and Oyster that's just over there on the corner of Demumbrian. I mean, how much of your business do you consider being from tourists?
A smaller percentage. Is
that right?
Yeah. When there's local events, we've always geared our marketing toward locals, and I think that starts back with when I first invested in Lower Broad was 408 Broadway, and it was Groon Guitars and Jack's Barbecue, and then Ed Stolman had the what's the name of the restaurant across the street? But anyway, it was for local people, and everything else was porn shops or pawn shops. And I put the brakes on. I can't open a restaurant when 1 out of every 100 people that come down here could be a potential customer. So we knew that we needed to get local people back downtown for that area to be successful. And what we came up with was dancing in the district. And so all of a sudden, Mayor Bredesen, who was one of the great mayors of this town, he was wealthy on his own. He wasn't looking for a handout. Bredesen said, let's do it up here on Capitol Boulevard, and if it's successful, we'll move it down to, and Vicki Oglesby, his chief of staff, was like, she was like, made it easy.
And Dance in the District, for folks who've never been, it was kind of, I remember growing up, and I would have been a teenager at the time, it was a place you could go see pretty big bands for free, right? There's no ticket price.
It was either on their way up or their way down.
Right. I mean... You'd see Cowboy Mouth every year. Okay, they were great. Sister Hazel, I recall, and I don't know, did the Counting Crows play sometime?
Yeah,
I mean, it was biggish names then, but it was free. Downtown Nashville was not what it is now. You're saying it was designed to bring locals to Lower Broadway.
Lower Broad, and I mean, you make Keb Mo for $600, Bare Naked Ladies for $15,000. The next year they were like $150,000.
Well,
they didn't come back, but it was the whole design was, hey, if we can get local people back down here and revitalize the interest in this area, then we have a chance to rebuild it. And have the type of restaurants we want. And that was it happened. They used it to recruit the Titans. One year the Titans sponsored us. The Predators sponsored us at one point, and it became this, where it was after work, happy hour. All of a sudden it was go home, put on my look at me clothes, and come back down.
Your look at me clothes. Oh, I like that. If you're just joining us, I'm Blake Farmer. This is Nashville. We're with Tom Morales of Tom Cat's Hospitality this hour, and we're going to put the brakes on this Lower Broadway conversation. We're coming back to it, though. Trust me. But we need to get some of your backstory here. So you grew up in Nashville. Big Catholic family. Is that where you started cooking?
Yeah, well, my dad used to make us go out on the patio and use the grill. Get your mother out of the kitchen. So,
what? Get your mother out of the kitchen?
Yeah.
So why did he think the kids needed to be cooking?
Because there was 10 of us, and it was a big job.
I see.
And if we all brought home a friend, there might be 20 of them. So, but and back then everything was frugal. I mean, he would go and buy chicken necks, 10, 20 pounds of chicken necks for a nickel a pound at Kroger, and boil them and render them, and carrots and celery and onions and garlic, and then give them to us, and we'd throw them on the grill. I was 14 years old before I realized it wasn't a delicacy to eat a chicken neck.
Well, I guess it would serve you well, the direction you headed. So, but the direction, I honestly did not know this story until prepping for this. But so you got your start at Starwood, another institution that has gone away, but it was formative for me. It's where I went on my first real date in high school. Okay. I think it was a Goo Goo Dolls concert, if I recall. But, it's been gone, I think, 20 years. Used to be, if there was a big concert in town, that's where it was. Holds something like 17,000 people. But most people don't think of, concert venues as being a place for fine dining. What was Tomcats doing? And I guess it wasn't Tomcats yet, but at Starwood.
No, it was Tomcats. It was. I was unemployed at the Green Hills YMCA, sitting there playing basketball, and I didn't have a job, and a friend calls and says, "Hey, they're looking for a chef out at Starwood Amphitheater." So I went out there. I had some cards printed up, said Tomcats on it, and went out there. And Doc Schiermeyer, who's passed away, was the backstage manager, and he introduced me to Steve Moore. Steve Moore hired me to be the backstage caterer for Starwood, and it was we became the oasis of catering for the difference between a movie and rock and roll is the band is there one night and then they're 300 miles down the road in another city. With movie catering, you're with them 50, 60, 70 days, and you can't say, "I'll get the butter tomorrow," because they'll be there tomorrow. You can, on a music set, a music concert, you can say, "I'll get it for you tomorrow." Well, they're going to be right. They're going to be in Birmingham.
Well, it's not like at Starwood you could run around the corner to the grocery store, at least at the time, and I think even still, it's kind of removed out there, deep Murfreesboro Pike, almost in Rutherford County.
Yeah, that was a special time. We just were able to. I'd come from Destin, Florida, so all of a sudden the grill from my childhood was the center of what we did. And so we'd have ahi tuna. I remember the first concert we did was Charlie Daniels and One for the Sun, and we did 1,500 pounds of crawfish. We were boiling them, and that secret was you had to boil all the seasonings before you even put the crawfish in. You had to have that water flavored, and people hadn't ever tasted that kind of cooking really in Nashville at the time. Nashville's pretty much growing up here was I'd say a white bread community. It was, no salt and pepper was about as far as you went.
Right.
So we were the first ones really to introduce seasoning. Randy Rayburn and a few other Deb Paquette, local chefs.
Yeah, and I want to get to them this hour. So Starwood was a seasonal thing. You're doing one night stands with the biggest bands in the country, right? I mean, you're talking U2 and it's and Metallica or whoever's playing there. So you parlay that though into catering on music video sets, and I think the story goes that you went and bought a taco truck or something.
It was stranger than that because I was doing videos for like Tom 2 and Scene 3 and Southern Production. Anyway,
which are what for music videos here in town?
The country music videos were lagging maybe 10 years behind rock and roll.
I see. MTV had gotten them going. CMT wasn't really cooking yet.
Yeah, and then when it happened, a lot of country music, so people were starting to worry about their waistline. We were the only healthy cookers in town. And so anyway.
So even on set, they're like, no, we can't just, order out. We need to.
Yeah, we need to make sure that I can think of all of them, but anyway, so it moved. I don't want to get into too much personal stuff.
You're talking about the waistlines of the country music stars. Okay.
So we were cooking healthy, and it was So a little movie came to town, and they called me and said, "Hey, we want to interview you. We hear you're the best caterer in town for production." And so we went to the interview. The last question they asked me was, "Do you have a mobile kitchen?" Well, I'd never heard mobile kitchen, those two words together in my life, but I knew the answer. I said, yes. And they said, well, don't call us, we'll call you. And so immediately, this is before the internet, you have to remember. So I called my sister, who is in L.A., who is in the movie film business, a set decorator. I said, Leslie, what's a mobile kitchen? And she said, well, it's like a Winnebago with a kitchen inside it. And I said, okay, send me a L.A. Times. So she sent me a L.A. Times via the mail, got it 3 days later. I find a mobile kitchen in Phoenix, Arizona. I didn't have the money to buy it. The movie calls me back and says, hey, you got the job. And I said, well, I talked to the bank. Bank said come up with a third of the down payment, and they'd finance the rest. So I said, well, I'm going to need $10,000 to buy. I mean, to block off my summer. So they said, okay, no problem.
When it really was for the taco truck.
Yeah, and I borrowed $2,000 from my brother-in-law, Moose. Went sight unseen, get off the plane in Phoenix, Arizona, and I can say this, Morales, but a little Mexican guy meets me, and he's standing in front of Ricky Ricardo's Chili Express, and it's a taco truck. Well, I didn't know what a mobile kitchen was. I didn't know what. I wrote him the check, got in it, drove 3 days. I didn't know what I was going to tell my wife at the time, and what is this? And I was in trouble. So we got exterior white paint from Lowe's and painted the whole truck white and hid the little Mexican with his sombrero. The funny part was Matt Southworth, who is a accomplished writer now. He drew the logo. He was 16 years old, drew us the logo, got a guy from Donaldson to paint it on the truck.
The logo, the Tomcats logo?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, he was 16 years old. Backstage at Starwood, and we put Mobile Kitchen number 3 on there because I'd read the Fred Smith story and how he had started FedEx without an airplane. He actually leased an airplane from Eastern Airlines, painted it with FedEx, made a 30-second commercial, gave the airplane back to Eastern Airlines, and everybody thought he had a fleet of planes to fly these packages, and he continued to use Eastern Airlines to fly his packages anyway. So I did Mobile Kitchen number 3 in honor of Fred Smith.
Oh, as if you have other trucks working at other sites. Well, so what, I mean, it almost sounds like you ended up running these it's like a high-end chuck wagon. I mean, the way you talk about it, it's not just like, oh, yeah, we're catering tonight for this movie set. It's like you're signed on, and maybe for 2 months, you're cooking for everybody who is there every day. What does that look like?
Well, there was another entrepreneurial moment in that. We innovated through ignorance. We set up a buffet. We tore out all on a typical movie set. Back then, you would come to a window and there'd be a menu board, and you'd say, I want this, this, and this. Then you'd walk to another window and they'd hand you out a plate of food. So you had 150 people lined up.
Taking orders
and going through it. So, man, I said, this is going to take forever. So we just set up a 2-sided buffet for every 150 people, 75 down each side. We were feeding everybody in 15, 20 minutes. And it was leading them to the grill where they get fresh ahi tuna or chicken or steak, whatever they wanted, boom. And we were on A League of Their Own, which was 2 years into it. And the producer came up to me, Joe Hartwick, and said, Tom, you're feeding everybody in 15 minutes. And I said, am I in trouble? And he says, no, we got 1,500 people here. Usually we'd have to bring in 3 trucks and be feeding people all over the place. You're doing it. I said, well, we set up a buffet for every 150 people. So we had 10 identical buffets set up leading to 2 different grills. And he says, you're saving me $7,500. And I said, how am I? He said, well, I did not know this. The way the union works is the last person to get their food is when they start their 30-minute break. So if you take an hour and a half to feed people, the first person's getting a 2-hour break, and it's costing them $15,000 an hour on A League of Their Own to film the movie. So I was giving them back 30 or 40 minutes every day just by the speed of. Yeah. So we had revolutionized the way catering was, and all of a sudden, this little company from Nashville was in demand. I mean, we did Groundhog Day. We went like just boom, boom, boom. One year we did 8 out of the top 10 grossing movies. We catered them. And the producers always said to us, the way you treat us shows up on the film. Says, because if you got bad catering, we were the first ones to introduce hospitality. We had 5 guys and girls that were from Nashville that understood hospitality. You can teach somebody how to cook. You can't teach them how to be nice.
Wow. Well, is there a reason that there wouldn't be a caterer in Hollywood who does all this stuff?
There was 2 that were 4 stars and Tony's, and then it was Tomcats.
Yeah.
We were the top 3 caterers. They didn't understand hospitality. Where they made their reputation was Wagyu beef or the most exotic, expensive stuff. They served it at lunch.
And you were known for
variety.
being nice.
Well, being nice. But we would go You know, we were like the Forrest Gump. You know, you could do shrimp this way, you can do shrimp that way. If you think about it, there's only 3-4 food groups, protein groups. You know, you got seafood, meat, and, you know, chicken, pork, and lamb. And you're not ever really going to serve lamb on a movie set. I did on City Slickers, and I had a run-in with Billy Crystal, but it was a good one.
Well, we need to take a break. Tom Morales is with us this whole hour, don't worry. And when we come back, we'll get a taste of Tomcat's cooking back home and a hint, there will be biscuits and jam. We'll be right back. This is Nashville.
Funding for This is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Music City Prep Clinic, Nashville-based provider for prep and offering comprehensive sexual health services in an environment designed to be safe, professional, and shame-free. Learn more at musiccityprep.org.
I'm Blake Farmer, and this is Nashville. We're joined in the studio by Tom Morales of Tomcat's Hospitality today. We've heard all about his catering business, not all about, just a little bit of the story, but the one that really made his name. But mobile kitchens are not all they're cracked up to be, are they? We'll start with a restaurant of his so iconic that when Tom came and gave it the Tomcat's touch, it became quite literally national news. The Today Show had to come and see how the biscuits are made at Loveless Cafe.
Upsy daisy. Ooh, Carol
We didn't,
y'all are not professional.
well, you didn't tell us to flour the
Now, I knew that. I knew I was supposed to flour this, Al, but I forgot. So let's try it. All right, so you flour your rolling pin, and you just kind of spread those
roll
out.
Gently.
Okay. What do you think?
And then
About
we
like
gonna-
that?
Yes, you got it, Katie. Al, you need a little work. There you go, girl.
Okay,
that's
good?
right. That's ready.
Okay, good.
So that is Carol Fay, who was teaching Katie Couric and Al Roker how to cut biscuits with a soup can. How'd that come to happen?
That is one of the funniest happenings and another entrepreneurial moment, because we had bought, two friends of mine and I had bought the Loveless Cafe. It was about to be turned into a strip mall, that property. It was wasting away. We bought it on December 3rd, December 27th or 28th. I had interviewed everybody in that building trying to find some morsel of real Loveless Cafe.
Because what they were just popping open cans and cooking. It wasn't the thing that it is today.
No,
nor started out to be.
And they only had one working oven, and so they'd pre-cook the biscuits. They'd rise and fall, so you were getting really a wafer. And some people thought that was the biscuit, but I found Miss Roberts and eventually found Carol Fay. But so anyway, there's one woman left that I need to talk to, and I bring her over. It's Carol Fay Ellison, and we sit down. And I said, Carol, what do you do here? And she said, well, I wash the dishes, and I cook breakfast on Saturday mornings, and I make the biscuits and the jams and the jellies. Well, the hair on the back of my neck stood up, and I said, how long have you been here? She said, well, I've been here since I was 14. I said, well, how old are you? She said, well, I'm 32. I said, so you've been here like 18, 19 years? And she said, yes. And I said, oh. And said, well, how much do you make? She said, well, I make $8.50 an hour and time and a half on overtime.
This was 2000...
1997 or somewhere in there,
really?
2001.
Late 90s. Okay.
I can't remember the exact, but it told me that she was doing this for the love of making the biscuits and the jams and the jellies. And I looked at her and I said, you're going to be the face of the Loveless. And she said, what's that mean? I said, you'll know when it's time. Well, the next day a guy came in, sat on the toilet, it fell through the floor, and we closed the restaurant.
Oh, you all had acquired it and closed it because it was in such rough shape.
Yeah, we had to do a major renovation on it. So 6 months later, Katie Couric calls, or the Today program calls and says, hey, we want to feature the Loveless Cafe. We're going to be in Nashville. Of course, everybody with an ego was raising their hand. I want to be on Today program.
Right.
And I said, okay, Carol Fay, this is
the time.
This is when you become the face of the Loveless. Well, she goes down there and just blows people away when she was on.
She looked so charming, like she'd been a trained actress or something. I mean,
she
was
waited
great.
her whole life for this.
Really?
And so she'd never been on an airplane, so it makes it even so Conan O'Brien calls. She's on Conan O'Brien flying to New York. Martha Stewart calls. She's on Bobby Flay calls. I mean, everybody, and it was just, it was so overwhelming, the joy in launching her, that everybody on the team was just like, look at her. And she, I mean, really, literally had never flown on an airplane. She was flying to New York City every week.
But so is that kind of where it began, that, Loveless is known for these biscuits? I mean, I'm amazed. People will come to town here and say, well, we got to go to Loveless. I mean, how do you even know about Loveless Cafe? And it's just sort of in the ether. People know that's a place to go, and you got to get the biscuits.
Yeah, and the fried chicken. I remember as a kid, I grew up in Madison, and it was like, before the interstate, it was like an hour and a half drive from Madison to get there.
Because it's like kind of almost deep Bellevue to where the Natchez Trace starts.
Right, it's exactly where it is now. But back then it was all surface roads, and we'd do a 2-car parade.
Because you got 10 kids.
and you ate on picnic tables out in front of it, and I'd have fried chicken. I didn't care what time of day it was, and my brother would have country ham. We all had our favorites, but the biscuit was the thing that was the secret. That was the thing that drew everybody, and the secret is not that difficult to figure out.
Right.
Lard.
Lard. All right. Well, lard is in the biscuits. That we've got that. We may go out with an exclusive from this interview here. All right, but that wasn't your first restaurant. So you had this huge catering business. You're doing dozens, maybe more than dozens of movies per year. You have restaurants. I think the first that you started was the Sapphire. Is that right? In
Sapphire, we were producing the Jazz Festival in Franklin, and it moved over to the factory parking lot.
And this was before the factory had totally become what it is today.
Well, it had done the Calvin Lehue renovation, and it was a cool place, but it was more ma's and pa's, and you didn't know whether they were going to open or close, or, it was just more like just a mall that had little booths in it and stuff like that. There was no chains or nationally known names, not that there are now.
So you took over a restaurant that was already in existence in the factory?
It was called Blue Wind, and it was a tea room. And the lady came out and said, "Hey, Tom, you're the only person I trust with my baby here." And I said, "Okay, well, let me look at it." I wasn't wanting to be in a restaurant, but I didn't recognize the fact that we always overcame with talent. We would throw people into the fire on the movie sets, and they would have to sink or swim. This gave us a place for people to rest, to train, to recruit, and to even see if they were good enough to even go out on a movie set.
Because you call that the NFL of kind of restaurant or catering or anything.
Yeah, you don't know where your restaurant's going to be the next day. When you know where your restaurant is, and you know where your tools are, and you know who your sources are, it makes it a lot easier. But when you're out on the middle of nowhere, we're 75 miles down a washboard dirt road in Patagonia, Arizona on Young Guns, and we don't have butter. Well, guess what? We don't have butter.
Get creative.
We use mayonnaise. but it's just that.
Be warned if you're eating at a Tomcats establishment.
On the border of Mexico.
There you go.
But
quick break here. If you're just tuning in, this is Nashville. I'm Blake Farmer, your host. We're with Tom Morales of Tomcats Hospitality, the coolest man in catering. So I'm curious, who were the restaurateurs you were learning from at that time as you were starting Sapphire, kind of transitioning or kind of building this complementary restaurant business to your catering business? Who were you learning from?
Well, I had other than my mother and my dad, I had a very unique experience in Destin, Florida, with Harbor Docks. Was the first real restaurant that I worked at. I worked for Ray Danner at Shoney's, his very first restaurant in Madison, and this story plays into it. So I'm working for Charles Morgan down at Harbor Docks in Destin, and learned the seafood business backwards and forwards. And that was during the winter when there was no customers, this is in the early 80s, late 70s, early 80s, we would go to New Orleans and see what they were doing. So I was there when the blackening thing happened. I met Paul Prudhomme. Matter of fact, his company was K. Paul's Tom
Is
Katz.
the blackening thing sort of blackened chicken, blackened shrimp,
blackened fish, everything. And then, you know.
I didn't know there was an era for the blackened thing. But there we go.
Well, it really, Paul Prudhomme is who made it famous. And he's very specific on how he does it, which is different. It's a blend of peppers. It's red, white, and black pepper. If you ever eat something that's blackened and it's hot in the first bite, that's not really the blackening method. It's a blend of peppers, so it's about your third bite before you break a sweat on your forehead.
Okay.
So all the nuances, Hershey color, Hershey chocolate brown is the color your roux is supposed to be before it's ready. And more roux, he would tell me, more roux are burned after you turn off the stove because the roux gets so hot it'll burn itself. So you got to keep stirring it after it's cooked. A lot of things like that, and really became a good friend and mentor. And then when I came back to Nashville, which is the Ray Danner story, Ray Danner came into...
Because Shoney's was based here at the time.
And he came to eat at one of the restaurants I was running in Destin. And I said, well, he didn't know I knew who he was, but I knew who he was because he would do these inspections. You know, he was a hard ass. But I said, I know who you are. You're Ray Danner. And, well, 3 weeks later, I'm working for him at the Sailmaker on West End. And that's how I got back to Nashville. And but that whole transition right there, having that hot New Orleans influence at the time, that was taking over the culinary world. And then I came back here and I met Deb Paquette. I'd go in there to get ideas. She did this. I tell her the story all the time, but a fried black-eyed pea. She'd cook the black-eyed peas al dente, then deep fry them, and then put them as croutons on your salads. And I'd do that on a movie set, and people say, oh, this is unbelievable.
You stole the idea from Deb.
Everything's eclectic in the food business, and don't let anybody say it's not.
And Deb had, what was the restaurant called on West End? It would have been that time. I don't know. What restaurant would you have been going into?
It was her first one. It was, she had just left Randy Rayburn. Randy Rayburn was the first real Nashville restaurateur.
And this is Midtown Cafe, Sunset.
Yeah, Sunset. And he was getting national acclaim for his healthy meals. And Randy was a great mentor and a great friend. And then Jody Faison, who had started 12th and Porter and the Rattlesnake Pasta and all. There was only 3 places that were doing anything outside meat and threes.
Mm-hmm. Well, so when, you got the Loveless, you got Sapphire out in Franklin. When did you start looking at doing something downtown?
Well, actually, they were building the Pinnacle building, and they wanted a foundation restaurant that was locally owned. And they came to me and asked me to do it, and we negotiated. And it was the first time I had ever done anything that was just 4 walls. Essentially, it was a blank canvas,
and from the ground up, right? Because you had sort of bought a restaurant that, well, both of them, they were
existing.
Yeah,
and it was just more or less not disturbing people's memories of what was there. And this one was, we could create our own picture. I mean, we could tell our own story. So we all those elements are, from the Worth and Bag tiles on the walls to the Olin Cox Cowboys to the Due South Star on the ceiling to...
You're saying the interior design was all intended to reflect some history of this city.
Or of my culinary.
Right.
Because
I guess the Southern Steak and Oyster, not a lot of oysters coming out of Nashville.
No, that's why it's south of somewhere. Right. That's still our moniker. But I had been in the Star Cafe in San Francisco doing Robin Williams' Miss Doubtfire, and the chef there just took us in, and he had all this layers of things going on in the restaurant. And I said, if I open a restaurant, this is what I want to do. So this is, again, an eclectic moment that we recreated. And there's elements from New Orleans. There's a nudie suit in there. There's the Cowboys. There's all these different things that each individually tell a story.
We need to take one more break, and we'll stay downtown when we come back. We'll get some music from a Tom Katz establishment, take a hard look at what's worth preserving in our ever-changing city, and we'll be right back with Tom Morales, so stay with us. This is Nashville.
Funding for This is Nashville comes from you, our listeners, and Music City Prep Clinic, Nashville-based provider for PrEP and offering comprehensive sexual health services in an environment designed to be safe, professional, and shame-free. Learn more at musiccityprep.org.
I'm Blake Farmer, and this is Nashville. We're joined this hour by Tom Morales of Tom Katz Hospitality. He built one of the biggest catering companies in show business, then plied his trade back home by starting a handful of well-known and well-loved establishments. We've sampled the biscuits at Loveless Cafe. We've maybe had a drink at Sapphire and Franklin. We're waiting on a table at the Southern over there, and while we kill some time, we will take in a little music at Acme Feed Seed.
Your love is a chunk of gold.
So this is Charles Wig Walker, who performs at Sunday Brunch typically. Doesn't exactly sound like the bro country or 70s rock you might hear at the neighboring honky tonks. So Tom Morales, can you introduce us to Wig?
Well, Charles Wig Walker's, I think he just turned 89. I went to his birthday party, but I didn't want to ask him how old he was. But,
Seems appropriate, though, at a birthday party. I get it.
But he's a legend of Nashville. He was Little Richard, Etta James, Otis Redding, all the Chitlin Trail. The real Music City began over on Jefferson Street, Joe Johnson, Charlotte Corridor with the Steal Away clubs, the New Era clubs, and he was part of that whole scene. And I tell an interesting story about Chet Atkins. I worked with Chet Atkins, producing Chet Atkins Musician Days for about 4 years before he passed away. But he used to say, well, and I'll do my best Chet. Man, Roy Clark, we used to go over there and check out those cats over there on Jefferson Street, and then he'd hesitate for emphasis because those cats couldn't come over and check us out.
Oh, interesting.
Meaning you could go, a white guy could go into a black bar, but the black guy couldn't come into a white bar. So he said, I learned a lot over there, and so Wig represents that era. He opened for James Brown for 20 years.
Really? I did not know that.
Yeah, he got kicked off the bus. James kicked him off the bus because he said, you got 3 songs. And he said, I did 7, but I made them medleys.
He played too long as the opening act.
Yeah.
I see.
And but he said, they came back and got me, but they kicked him off the bus. So if you saw the movie American Gangster, which we catered, the Denzel Washington character was his manager for a number of years and played at the club in that movie. He was
Wig played in the movie.
No, he was the original. They have he wasn't the actual actor in the movie, nor was Denzel Washington. But his manager Frank was his manager and played in the club that Denzel Washington was the main character in. So.
Well, so he sings most Sundays still?
Saturdays, and it's Saturday brunch.
Saturday brunch. So what's the significance of having, I mean, obviously, you do a walkabout on Lower Broadway, and you hear much more than country music. I mean, you're going to hear, Guns N' Roses, and you're going to hear other sort of mainstream stuff. But why was it important to you to feature him and other musicians that are not, just sort of the bro country that might attract people to honky tonks?
Well, I could think because it's called Music City, and it was just not. If you go all the way back to the Fisk Jubilee Singers, I mean, they were 1882 playing in front of the Queen, And she said, "You must be from a musical city." And they were all ex-slaves, not all of them, but 8 out of the 11, I think, were. So there's a huge tradition, and I think to sum Nashville up as modern country that's being played on the radios right now is a disservice to all the people that came before them. The blood, the sweat, the tears, the heartbreak, the dreams people come here for. When I was growing up, they had they called it the champagne hour or the guts hour, and you could get up on a stage. They'd have the house band. You could play 2 songs. You'd tell them what 2 songs they were, and they'd sing them too. And they, for a lot of people, that was the only songs they ever played on a stage in Nashville.
You're saying guts hour is sort of like, if you've got the guts, come up here and play
come
2
up here
songs.
And play.
I see.
And
wow.
so it's
their guts hour at Acme Feed Seed?
Well, we have had it.
Okay.
In honor of that. But karaoke is, the new guts hour. But
there you go.
You can bogart that. But to have a real band and just to be able to get up on a stage in Nashville. We had a young lady whose father was a Navy SEAL who had passed away, was killed in action, actually. And her dream was to be on a stage in Nashville. And so we had our little band front her, and she came up and sang she sang 30 minutes, but it was like everybody, it's choking me up right now, but everybody was in tears to see our dream.
There is still the dreaming on Lower Broadway. I mean, as much as we can sit here and cast stones, it's like, I think people, you see them getting off the plane at the airport and like, they brought their guitar and I don't know what they plan to do with it, but they were going to go, see if there's something to be done on Lower Broadway. But it sounds like you're trying to make sure some of that is real, that you could have a dream and get on a stage.
Yeah, I don't think there's very few places that allow that anymore. Most of it is, they don't even pay. We pay $750,000 to our musicians every year. Most of them are tip buckets, and they say, okay, this is your set list. And
you're saying the bar says, here's what you're going to play because it's the crowd favorites, yeah.
Well, and crowd favorites, it's the beer drinking music. Where, for us to put somebody up there and they're singing originals, you can probably dismiss half the room right off the bat.
Well, that's interesting too.
Before COVID happened, you had these conventions come to town. Think about a convention. They're not choosing to come to Nashville. They're being told they have to come to Nashville for a convention. So day one, they go into, I'm not naming names, but they're getting cheap drinks, bad drinks, drinks spilled on them. It's just a party. And then by day 2 or 3, they find the locals say, hey, go to Acme. That's where they're playing the real music. That's where they're letting people play what they want to play. And guess what? They show up and they say, wow, this is what I think about Nashville. And being from Nashville, that's the thing I'm most proud of, that we've been able to maintain that tradition of a discovery platform, really.
I want you to get into why authenticity is so important to you. And, I guess you might start with, like, what would you do differently at Acme if you were just looking to draw the biggest crowd? I mean, you've got a hot spot right there in the middle of everything. You probably don't have the biggest crowd.
No, and I to be smart, I probably need to sell it. I'm serious. And get East Nashville's a music scene. It's happening right now. That's where all the musicians are, and they're playing the little places and dives there. But, you can, I'm a little guy. Rent is going up on our building probably 5-fold.
Because you are part of the ownership of Acme Feed Seed, but that doesn't mean you own that building.
Correct. Yeah. Then you have...
and it's what, 4 stories? I mean, you got a rooftop.
We were the first ones to do a rooftop, and to make all we viewed it as 4 different restaurants, really. And we have an event space. It's fantastic. It stays busy all the time. We have the second floor, which I said needs to be like a salute to the sports scene here, which we had TVs and sushi. And then the first floor was the platform, the music room. And then the rooftop is the best view in Nashville. But to sit here, the taxes, I don't know if you're familiar with the taxes, but the taxes about doubled. Yeah. And so as a tenant, we're paying taxes, we're paying, getting ready to pay very high rent. So it's a deep-pocketed game now. It's you got to have a ton of money to play the game. There used to be a rule, and I'm not going to say who changed it, but it had to be several people were part of it that said you couldn't have a chain on the lower 5 blocks of Nashville. Now there's multiple restaurants and bars that are not one-offs.
Right.
So again, the little independent guy, which my daughters own the business now, and some key people in my employment, but there's no code that says, oh, you're a little guy. There's no rent control.
You get a break.
Yeah, there's no tax break. And so it's weighed against us. And the square footage we talked briefly about, but now it's not that there's more people down there. We're sharing the pot with more people. Actually, tourism is down, seriously down. And it's reflected in the tax revenues, reflected in the hotel room occupancy. So they can, say it's great and wonderful, but the proof is in the pudding.
Well, when it comes to protecting authenticity, that it's such in the eye of the beholder. What's the authentic thing? But to you, what's the authentic culture that you're trying to preserve that you think is worth preserving so people have a reason to keep coming?
Well, it has to come from the heart first, and it can't be a business plan. Preserving the creative aspect of what the art form dictates. So, you can get somebody up there playing covers. I mean, there's these Filipino bands that can play covers all day long, sound just like the artist. But that's not Nashville. It's not authentic. It's not real. It's not even creative. We never say you can't play a cover. They play covers all the time in our bar, but it's their choice. So I think the creative freedom to do what you want to do is what I want to protect. And it is at a sacrifice. It is. But you know what? I've never driven. Hey, I don't say, hey, I want to make $1 million. Let me do this. I wanted to save the Acme. It was a postcard, So that was my. Then I get investors, and then I got to figure out how to pay them back. So it's
start 4 restaurants
backwards.
in it. If you're just tuning in, this is Nashville. I'm Blake Farmer. We're with Tom Morales of Tomcats Hospitality for just a couple more minutes. I'm wondering what is next for you? Are you still in the business of starting new concepts, or is that ship kind of sailed?
No, I've got some beautiful kids and very creative kids, and I think they've got my DNA in their bodies, and I think
same commitment to the authenticity piece.
And Lauren is on the independent music board, and Kendall is taking up the catering aspect of what I do or have done. And I got twin 24-year-olds who fashion themselves guitar players, so they understand all their friends are the creative ones, and they are too. So I think there's enough bloodline that I've created to carry on without me actually being day to day.
Well, does it have to be that, like people who carry it on because Dad expects us to, or are there folks in town, kind of in the hospitality arena, who have the same sort of ethos and kind of want to do exactly what you're doing, with you, do it just in their business?
I found that and this is going to sound, I mean, I've made money, and I'm an entrepreneur, and I need money to continue. But I started with zero, and I'll end up at zero. But the idea of linking creativity to greed, it just doesn't happen. When AI starts writing your country music songs, we're lost as a creative entity here in Nashville. So I'm optimistic. There's more music being produced right now than ever in the history of man. It's being done in garages and houses and all over the country. And now the platform is TikTok, and I can't embrace it. I'm too old, but I'm not too old, but I don't really have the energy or time. But my point is how you break out in this music scene these days. And then you got, the big corporations sucking the life out of the artists. They don't make any money. You can write a hit song and make $35. So there's some hurdles. I don't want to sound pessimistic, but I think if you want to be totally creative, you go sit on a hilltop and play your guitar and sing to the birds and the wind. Once you enter into the arena of making money at it, it's a whole different ballgame. And I think any musician in this town will tell you that.
Yeah. Well, you clearly have found a way to bring your creativity into the business world and straddle that line, and maybe even call other folks out when the straddle ain't working. So thanks for doing it here. Tom Morales of Tom Cat's Hospitality, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for tuning in this hour. This is Nashville, a production of Nashville Public Radio. Today's episode was produced and directed by Tasha AF Lemley. The masterminds behind our theme music are Larange and Namir Blade. Listen back at thisisnashville.org or wherever you get good podcasts. You can also just ask your smart speaker to play the latest episode of This Is Nashville. Conversation doesn't have to end here. You can comment, tell us what you want to hear on the show by leaving us a message at 615-751-2500. You can also find us on Blue Sky, Instagram, X, at This Is Nashville. This is Nashville. I'm Blake Farmer. Go in peace.